Hello everyone, this is Mr.MonsterConnoisseur, and today I'm going to be reading Special Education Part 6, and basically since Special Education is now finished, I'm going to be continuing to read them, as I promised in the DOTR comp, but yeah. So yeah, there is 9 parts in all. I've already recorded up to Part 5, so I'm continuing today, and I'm going to release them all before Christmas, like the week before, or so yeah, I'll probably release them daily, just one after another. So yeah, look forward to that. Without further ado, let's begin. Special Education Part 6 by user 970 _ I know what it is now. I scoffed and sputtered. Oh, do you now? Oh, do you now? An aggressive response. I really wasn't in the mood to deal with this shit after hours of walking, followed by another hour of running. There's nothing else. Something that happened when you were younger. Before the tragedy. I need to know what it is. And why do you, of all people, need to know? I need to remedy this. To help you. I grunted, taking in my surroundings briefly. Just woods, as far as the eye could see. What makes you think it's your problem to solve? I inquired sternly. And how exactly does knowing about this thing that you've come up with help anyone? Can't solve an issue without showing the source of it, she responded. Perhaps I can continue to unpack your mind further. I grunted. This was her plan after all. I should have fucking known it. I'm sorry to do this to you, but I promise the ends justify the means. She continued solemnly. She continued solemnly, eyes staring into mine. I didn't move. And I'm sorry about your father. It was tough for me realizing that I had led you to this. The thing you'd been desperately avoiding for the past decade or so. But I can't imagine how tough it was for you. I didn't want to dignify her statement with a response, so I let her continue without interruption. Do you know what the 5 stages of grief are, Charlie? I continued to give her the silent treatment. She didn't mind. First there's denial, then anger. Bargaining comes next. And then depression sets in. Then finally, acceptance is made. She stepped closer to me as she spoke. I wanted to back away, but something held me in place. Something I didn't understand. Something I couldn't understand. Yet. Everyone processes grief in their own ways, Charlie. Any of these stages can last anywhere from months to half a second. But you, she emphasized, pointing her finger at me, you've been stuck in denial for the past 9 years. You put a lock on your mind, forcing yourself not to think about anything before his death. You only refined it over the next 9 years. It was so strong not even I could break it, but it had a weak point. She paused for a moment, smiling and thinking to herself for a moment, while I watched in contempt. And it was that trip, the one you and your father went on. Prying that from your mind allowed me to see something. A hill in a cemetery, with an unmarked grave. That's as far as I could see into you. I thought about my mother's suggestion, the one I had used as an excuse to leave about 24 hours ago. I could see her demeanor shift, and I knew she was recognizing what I was talking about. At that moment, I can feel her reading my mind. The tides that were once withstandable several hours ago were far too great to combat. And that led me to finally picking the lock that's poisoned you for the last 9 years. And once I see through it all, we can start the healing process together. She spoke. Together? I hated that word more than anything. Together is what got me into this mess. Together is what she constantly preached to me. Together. My thought process was interrupted when I heard a small gasp from Lilum, dropping her smug look. She looked at me wide-eyed and said, I found it. Of course my thought process had practically guided her to it. I protested. The tides she created in my mind were too much, but I could not hold out for a little longer. Maybe I could come up with something. How the fuck can I come up with something when she can't? And be there, side of my head, to witness it? Fuck. For fuck's sake, Charlie, stop struggling, she yelled, rushing to me before I had a chance to respond, gripping my arms, touching her forehead to mine. And at that point, I couldn't resist any longer. November 1st, 2040. Then. Oh, Charlie. I heard my teacher call my name as she looked over at me with a smile on her face. It's recess. The other kids were playing while I'm sitting at my desk, organizing my colored pencils and pens. I get angry whenever I see them in a mess, so I gotta sort them. Why aren't you playing with the other kids? I don't know, Miss Bonella, I said. Mom had always commented on how independent I was. I didn't really know what it meant, but I guess it meant I was good at being alone. I always thought it was more fun playing with my sisters, though. Us and Dad would always horse around on the weekends. Me and him built a pellet fort once and tried to defend it from my sisters who were trying to break in. It was so much fun. Have you not made any friends yet? She continued to ask. I tell her the cat girl with a weird tail a lot since Monday. Is she my friend? Or did she just like talking to me? Oh, the plant girl that wanted me to play husband with her. Pretty sure me and her are friends. Oh, that just won't do. You haven't spoken to anyone today, have you? She said in a playful, stern tone. What does she mean? I talked to a few boys today, and they said they wanted me to join their club as they chanted, "No girls allowed!" at the girls. Oh, there's no need, she cut me off, smirking. These kids clearly don't want to be your friends. They don't? I said. What does she mean? You're a good child, she said, quieter than the rest. And a good child like you deserves a special reward. Your eternal reward. Special reward? What could it be? Candy? Good grades? Both? I looked up at her, beginning to get decided. I hope it's both. She put a finger over her mouth, whispering, "Shh. I don't want the other kids to get jealous. This is just our little secret together. Must be really special." I got up and followed her. It must be Candy if she's taking me to it. She's leading me to this closet door, opening it and beckoning me inside. It's right here, sweetie, she said. What is it? I asked as I walked in, and she walked in too. Oh, nothing, darling. Just some special education. She winked and then closed the door, turning the light on before licking her lips in it. September 23rd, 2053. Now, I pushed off of her, stumbling and hitting back on a tree. The pain it caused me paled in comparison to the pain I was starting to feel. God fucking damn it. There's a reason that Locke was there. Is this what you fucking wanted? I cried out, my ability to focus and control myself having been lost on me. I stumbled around for a while, nearly vomiting before that fucking Willem just started to grab me. Shh! Her intent at getting me to quiet down had failed. Get the fuck off me! I screamed, writhing around, trying my best to get away, to purge all the overwhelming information that she had released that was now flooding my mind. But I knew it was far too late for that. I continued to squirm in her arms, eventually tackled onto the ground again. I gazed into her face, conflicting emotions preventing me from doing anything else. I guess this was it. This was all there was to it. I understand now. I understand that this is all the world had to offer me, and all I had to offer it. All because some horny dipshit fucking assaulted me when I was too young to even know what that word meant. And I guess I'm the fucking lucky one because of it. That's what they say, don't they? He enjoys it. He likes it. He wants more of it. Yeah, I fucking understand now. Because I'm the fucking broken one after all. It's kind of funny after thinking about it. It's very funny. I started laughing. Hard. Willem looked at me, loosening her second embrace of the day, worried. And that only made it funnier. If she understood like I did, then I bet she would be laughing as well. But she doesn't. How am I gonna blame her? No, I could never blame any of them. They just don't want to know what this is all like. How could she understand? How could any of them fucking understand? I laughed harder. Funny, we've come this far and I still find myself asking the same questions I did back when I was still in my family. Because all this marinating in my mind even before this confrontation. Makes sense, I guess. Well, there's nothing else here she can discover. And she wants to watch me get assaulted. But she would enjoy it as well. Yeah, I bet you fucking would. My joyous hysterics became rage as I managed to take advantage of her loosened grip and shove myself out of her grasp. I scrambled away, standing up and turning up to run, before stopping myself from doing so. It would only delay the inevitable. I looked back at her, recoiling from my escape, as old memories and ideas began to return to me. Thoughts I was having just after my father's death, and once again graced my mind. Of an escape I thought infallible. "Why are you laughing?" Alone said, staring at me solemnly, almost like my dad. I stared at her, debating whether or not I should reply or not before settling on, "It was just kind of funny." She continued to stare at me. "It's very funny, actually. And these stupid motherfuckers tried to figure out what was wrong with me, without even realizing that what they were doing was just repeating what had happened to me, in different ways." I chuckled. From showing me porn to groping me. Because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. She remained silent. I wonder what they would have done, actually. What you would have done. And nothing happened to me at all. What if I was just born without an emotional regulator? What if I had some sort of mental disorder? What if I was asexual? I can see the smallest part of a recoil on that last word. Now that's something I bet you haven't heard in a while. The word asexual is treated as the same level as the words fuck, ass, shit, and bitch. Actually more like a racial or a homophobic back in the 2010s slur against the entirety of the monster kingdom. And that's because it represents the one thing they haven't accounted for. The women were all turned into monsters. In this process introduced hormones that superseded any sexuality they had beforehand. When it comes to the men, though, those who weren't cis were given magical aids to complete their physical transition. Those who were gay became alps. Those who were bi and pansexual weren't really given any other options. Sad for them. But they never talk about whatever happens to the asexual men. Even mentioning that word is a crime. So I guess I was wrong. There is something wrong with it after all. There's something wrong with them. This whole thing. It was already. But I repressed it along with most of what happened to me in the 2040s. You know, shortly after my father's death, I began to daydream a lot. Hell, before his death, too. But after, I guess, was my first coping mechanism, before I just locked everything away and began to wonder about pretty much everything I'd been taught at that point. And that was the moment I realized there was nothing wrong with me. Before that, I just thought I was broken. I thought that pleasure and happiness is what I should have gotten out of what she did to me on that day, as well as the weeks and months that followed. But it didn't stop there. I continued to think differently about things, about our history, culture, and the way people are treated, and about that damn mandate of Lilith. I continued. The law that ended history, they say. Turns out, as I would come to find out, it actually wasn't a compromise that man and monster forged out a desire for a better future. It was a rushed and basically empty rule that was constantly taken advantage of, and it only existed to quell the heat between the two factions of monsters. The submissive ones, who favored courtship and seduction, and the dominant ones, who favored force and sexual seduction too, I guess. It seemed like a mood change from triumphant to vengeful and back again with every sentence I spoke. The mandate of Lilith stated that men could have courtships between the ages of 15 to 17, and sex was criminalized until the members of his courtship and partook it were of age. But then if a man were 18 and older and single, well, let's just say that suitors will start to get more proactive. Because you know this already, after all. You are alone. It was your mother, maybe your grandmother, that signed this thing into law in the first place. All she did was nod. She was listening. Rarely among others like her. I think you and I know that's basically an empty law at this point. I mean, for God's sake, the damn counselors were quoting me as well before I was of age. Because despite being psychological, they ignored the strides made by the inferior human species and dismissed sexual harassment as a myth. I paused for a moment. For the first time in a very long time, I felt something different. I felt catharsis. I looked at Willem, the one who wore the same expression as she did prior to that verbal release, but now I could see tears welling down her eyes. I didn't know what that meant. Probably that she wanted another hug. I scoffed, remembering that method of escape had come up with years ago. I'd realized I'd been approaching this all wrong. Running was useless. This much I knew. And train hopping wasn't any better. I needed to get rid of the thing they were after. The part of me they were after. Looks like that knife's about to get some use. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a deep in the mail, right? Far too precious to be thinking about things like politics, war, and death. I should be in somebody's dungeon, where people like me belong. Isn't that right, Riley? I taunted. It's really? Was her response. You sure aren't any talkative anymore. Really? What happened to the enthusiasm around that damn healing process you constantly waxed poetic about? Is it a thing of the past now? Do you just invent it? I know you guys love doing that shit, but I expected at least some restraint here. I continued on my long tirade. I'm caring about everything and everyone. I was going to ride that catharsis high all night long, but I stopped myself. I need to take care of something. I reached behind into my back pocket, pulling out the knife. Don't worry, I reassured her. This won't affect you in the slightest. And to be honest, I can't believe I didn't do this already. Guess I was a coward, I continued to say, looking at her as my expression fully changed in one of apprehension. The moment I started doing my pants was the moment she went wide-eyed. Knock was the last thing I heard before I was tackled to the ground for the third time today, shoving me backward and onto my back, with both her hands gripping the one that held the knife. I heard a strange gargling noise as I hit the ground and felt a rush of warm liquid pouring onto my skin. I looked at her face, realizing what I did, as I rolled her off of me, revealing the knife had burrowed deep within her abdomen. And in that moment, I felt something new once more. Well, that was Special Education Part 6. It was really interesting with him going on a rant about shit. Well, this is interesting. And I'm basically trying to neuter himself. Anyways. So yeah, and the ending with her being stabbed. So and we have some more stuff to cover in Part 7. So see you tomorrow, I guess.